Part 2. Back to where we were at. The idiot. The idiot, the derive, the determinant, full stop is the way that Liam Gillick, the conceptual artist from the 90s and, well, up till now, refers to it, is designed, it's a trick that's designed to get the audience not only to feel as though they are operating outside of bourgeois norms, and I'm going to keep using bourgeois norms because it's the easiest way to talk about the like collective mass that responds to mass media. Um, so in order to get people to kind of shake their shake out the dust, as it were, or like acknowledge the distance that they have as an individual from the collective mass, um, it's also so that's one way of looking at the idiot. Another way of looking at the idiot is to view it as a way that people can um, engage with an art practice that is non-traditional, or at least non-traditional in that it's not a painting, a sculpture, or a piece of architecture. Which in the Western world, those are the three traditional arts that we have, right? So if it's not painting, it's not sculpture, and it's not architecture, then how do you get people to understand art practice if it's non-traditional? And one of the easiest ways is to get them involved, is to get them to be a part of it. And because once they're a part of it, then they feel some sense of ownership over it. They feel some sense of engagement with it, and it becomes for them a different kind of experience. Now, Kester deals with this idea, that, specifically the experience of the individual with regard to a collaborative artistic project, when he talks about Jean-Luc Nancy's theories of the singular, and how the idea of the singular really boils down to a delineation outside of a community, or in certain cases within a community. What am I saying? Basically, what Kester puts forth is that there's, you know, when people join a collective art practice, they are not putting down their entire individuality. They are merely picking up a different set of receptors. Now, that's not exactly what he says in the text, but that's how I am extrapolating what he brings up. Because he talks about Jean-Luc Nancy, the sociologist, as somebody who defines basically none of us have individuality. All of us exist as one conglomerate group, or you know, do, 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 do. We are always already linked to others by virtue of, quote, an original or ontological sociality, end quote, that precedes our very identity as thinking beings. So this kind of harkens back to the idea of a collective unconscious, where there's something in the ether that connects all of us, and we might not know it, but we are certainly not individuals. We are always identified as masses of people. Now, Nancy was writing that during a very specific period, and that's why it sounds the way it does. When Kester reads it and brings it into the debate about dialogical practices, and specifically about collaborative practices, he is saying that, you know, when those kids came together to record the videos on top of a parking garage, they didn't actually put down their identity. They just augmented it. They added something to it. And to argue with Kester on that point, Guy Debord never stopped being Guy Debord for the sake of the Situationists. Hugo Ball was always Hugo Ball. He was Hugo Ball performing with the Dadaists, but he was always Hugo Ball. And similarly, Tristan Tzara was always Tristan Tzara. And even when he was finished with his Dadaist groupings, he just, you know, became a surrealist. Um, and so when these people, I guess the idea that I'm getting at is, you know, what Nancy is saying is that all of us are always in a collective. What Kester is saying is that we all bring our individuality to that collective. And when the collective if it ever ends, but when that collective ends, we take with us our individuality and the memory, or the memory of the involvement, basically. And so it's really important when thinking about these ideas, these projects, these artistic projects, that each project needs to be analyzed individually in terms of the specific identities and histories of the participants. So even though Dada just kind of developed on its own and wasn't this project that was analyzed and considered beforehand, it still followed in suit with this rule, which is why it was successful. And the Situationist International did the same thing. It considered the identities and the histories of the participants in the development of the project. So the Dadaists were constantly thinking about the fact that they were from a variety of different places. The Situationists were constantly thinking about the fact that they were all from France. Both of those groups were constantly thinking about the fact that they were of the very moment that they were making their work happen. The Dadaists felt the reality of 1914, 1915, 1916 when they went into Cabaret Voltaire. The Situationist International felt the weight of a post-war France, very specifically to France, when they coalesced in 1957. And future projects, especially ones that are designed by single authors or a group of authors that involve community groups, they need to be considerate of the identities and the histories of those participants. So here we have Suzanne Lacey's Code 33. And you can see that it's pretty much as the book describes it. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of automobiles, and there's lots of activity happening as this conversation between Oakland City Police and Oakland City Youth happened in this cordoned off space. So what Lacey had done was take the precedent set by her previous project, and developed it into this kind of event. This event where she had considered the identities and the histories of the participants, and she knew that by having those participants make a full break with their day-to-day life, get a cop out of the squad car, get a teenage kid. I don't know what teenage kids do, but stop them from whatever they're doing and get them to come and to this event. That is exactly what Tristan Tzara is saying. The cop, his bourgeois normalcy is driving a squad car around Oakland, stopping things and calming a community, stopping crime, calming a community. The kid is doing normal kid things, which, again, I don't really know what teenagers do. I just see them all over the place, and they constantly seem to be walking with backpacks. So to get them to come together is to get them to acknowledge idiotic behavior. Idiotic behavior in the sense that Tristan Tzara defined it as anti-norm. So if the norm is riding around in a squad car, getting that squad car to stop, the person in it to leave and enter into a conversation with somebody who he sees every day wandering around with backpacks is enough of that full stop, is enough of that idiotic, is enough of the what Guy Debord prescribes. This break with your conscious reality into so that you can see things in a different way. So that's one kind of collaborative practice. Another kind of collaborative practice, and one that Koester is decidedly not dealing with, is that which involves the making of quote unquote fine art objects, or like reified art objects that exist inside of white cube gallery spaces and are designed so that they can be put up for sale within this specific market known as the art world. And here we have a photograph after a gelatin performance, um, in which all of the participants are pulled together and for like one group shot at the end of, or during the duration of one of the performances. I think this one's from earlier this year, 2013. It's either from the end of 2012 or 2013. It took place in Germany. Um, and you can see that there's three men in horse costumes. There's a few other people that seem to be in some semblance of costumes. There's a few people without their shirts on. There's this really gender bending character up front with these the fake breasts and jean cutoffs and scraggly hair. So one of the things that makes this kind of collaborative practice so specific and also so against or counter what Kester and Guy Debord and Tristan Tzara put forth is that these people are actually not considering the individual's histories or what their perspective is. Instead, they're just designing a project that actually needs more hands than they have access to. And by pulling these people together under another name, under this group name, Gelatin, by pulling them all together and showing them the way to just like, okay, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be like put this blindfold on, spin around in a circle, walk towards that wall, if you can find the wall, and hammer a nail into it. Or tell me where I should put this big chair so that you can jump on top of it. These are some things that Gelatin has actually done in the past. I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. But basically, instead of saying, this art project is for a community, they're saying this artwork is a community. And it's not going to give you any direct response. It's not going to make the lives of teenagers and police officers in Oakland better. This project did not make the lives of the surrounding area in Germany any better or really any different. What it did is it gave the viewers, the participants, as it were, a chance to engage with art practice. So, in a certain extent, it is still a little bit like breaking out of the norm, but it's breaking out of the norm and fitting very specifically into art practice. It's kind of like if someone's walking down the street and all of a sudden decides to stop and stand on a sculptural pedestal. Because, instead of stopping and talking to somebody that they might not speak to on a regular basis, in the case of Code 33, they're stopping and acknowledging their proximity to fine art practice. So what happens when people just walk in off the street anticipating seeing fine art, and all of a sudden they're part of fine art? All of a sudden they're engaged with it, they're making it, they're talking to the artist, they're doing all of the work. And so this kind of art practice is something that, as I said, exists outside of Kester's scope. He's not researching these practices. He's much more interested in politically viable and politically kosher practices, but it's still there. Now, one of the things, and I don't have that much time before the end of, I just want to make this a half hour today, that I want to talk to you about is uh, this. Blah, 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 blah. So everybody knows what happened in 2008. And all of a sudden, Occupy Wall Street. Well, what happened during the Occupy movement was there was a lot of conversations about collective practice and specifically its relationship to fine art. And the Wall Street Occupennial is a blog that was put together during the actual occupation that was meant to be this this net that was collecting all of the cultural production. I'm going to run out of time, so we're just going to do another video after this. So there's going to be 3 parts. Happens.